Recently, two internet influencers were arrested and accused of Naira Mutilation, with one imprisoned and one set free on bail. I bet you know their names already. Some people wonder why Naira Mutilation is a big deal. I mean, what's there with spraying Naira notes at wedding receptions, birthday parties, burial receptions? I mean, my guest on the show today has some insight as to the economic implication of mishandling Naira notes. This is MarketSquare. My name is Oluwa Pelumi, and as always, I'm happy to always have you join me on the show. But let's start with the directive from the Central Bank of Nigeria to banks. The Central Bank of Nigeria has issued a directive to all banks prohibiting the use of foreign currency as collateral for Naira loans. This move falls on the list of efforts by the Central Bank of Nigeria to strengthen the country's financial sector and ensure regulatory compliance. In a letter addressed to all banks, the CBN outlined new guidelines prohibiting the practice and exceptions for specific types of foreign currency collateral. According to that letter signed by Mr. Ditono Adedeji, who is the Director of Bank Supervision Department, he said the use of foreign currency denominated collaterals for Naira loans is now prohibited, except in cases where the collateral is in form of Eurobonds issued by the federal government of Nigeria or guarantees provided by foreign banks, including standby letters of credit. So let's put this in context. Mr. A wants to take a loan, and Mr. A approaches the bank and discusses the loan terms, including the amount he needs and the interest rate. Okay? Now, at the point of offering collateral, before now, instead of local currency assets, Mr. A could propose using assets valued in a foreign currency. Well, you have stocks, you have bonds as security for the loan. The bank will assess the value and liquidity of the collateral. If the bank agrees, Mr. A then will sign a loan agreement outlining the terms, including a clause specifying what happens if the value of the collateral falls below a certain threshold. The bank will also determine the loan-to-value ratio, which is the percentage of the collateral's value that they will lend against. Mr. A might then need to transfer the ownership of the foreign currency asset to the bank or pledge it with them. This gives the bank the right to sell the collateral if it defaults on the loan. Once everything is finalized, the bank will disburse the loan amount in Naira. Now, this directive by the Central Bank of Nigeria to banks is to ensure that at the point of offering collaterals, only Naira-denominated collateral should be acceptable. The Central Bank of Nigeria, by this act, hopes that it will increase Naira liquidity. And by stopping the use of foreign currency as collateral, there is the tendency that this will push more foreign currency into the official market where Nigerians can now buy and sell it for Naira. It could also bring about stability in the foreign exchange market. A stronger supply of Naira could help stabilize the exchange rate between the Naira and foreign currencies, particularly the US dollar. It could also encourage borrowing in Naira. With less reliance on foreign currency collateral, businesses and individuals might be more incentivized to take out loans in Naira, potentially boosting domestic economic activity. It could bring about prudent use of foreign currency. The CBN might be aiming to discourage people from holding excessive amounts of foreign currency outside the official channels. To the banks, the CBN instructed that all loans currently secured with dollar-denominated collaterals, other than as allowed by the new directive, should be wound down within 20 days. Now, reacting to this instruction by the Central Bank of Nigeria, the president of the Association of Bureau de Change Operators in Nigeria, Alhaji Aminu Gwandabi, we had him on the show about 2 weeks ago, expressed his surprise that many exporters come to the official window to source forex despite having billions of dollars in their domiciliary account. He further advised that the CBN should exclude non-oil exporters from accessing forex at the official window. Now, in response to that, the chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mrs. Odiri Erewa, almost immediately faulted Alhaji Aminu Gwandabi's argument. According to her, excluding non-oil exporters from the official forex market would impact negatively on production costs, which would in turn drive up the price of product. The fallout from stopping non-oil exporters from accessing the forex market would dampen investment in the manufacturing sector. That was what she said there. She also said that non-oil exporters would seek an audience with the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, in order to emphasize the need to discourage the idea being peddled by the Association of Bureau de Change Operators in Nigeria. That's quite a battle there. And let's go to the update from the World Bank. According to the World Bank's macro poverty outlook for Nigeria, April 2024, it has it that rising inflation coupled with weak earnings resulted in 10 million Nigerians slipping into poverty in 2023. Whooping 10 million Nigerians slipped into poverty in 2023. The report paints the picture of an economy where nominal earnings have failed to match the soaring inflation rate, which has led to the decline in the standard of living of Nigerians across the country. The report reveals alarming statistics regarding poverty in Nigeria across various economic thresholds. According to that report, 30.9% of the population in Nigeria falls below the international poverty rate of around $2.15 per day, and that is an equivalent of around 2,200 Naira per day, given the rate as at this morning. Even more concerning is the fact that 63.5% of Nigerians live in poverty if we consider the lower middle income earners bracket. There you have the teachers, there you have freelancers, there you have graphic designers, there you have shopkeepers. Only a few of them can earn more than $3.65 per day, and that's close to 4,000, if not even 4,000 naira as of this morning. Okay, that's per day there. Now, for the upper middle income class, where you have the young executive, there you have the managers, there you have the doctors, a staggering 90.8% fall below the upper middle income poverty line of around $6.85 per day. Whooping, isn't it? So why all this? Why all this? Why do we have all this at the moment? This heightened level of poverty has been attributed to a combination of weak macroeconomic fundamentals and deep-seated structural constraints. The over-reliance on the oil sector, the low state revenues, you have expensive petrol subsidy, ineffective tax rates have limited the state capacity and public service delivery. We can go on to talk about the high levels of inflation, which was fueled by the loose monetary policy deployed by the Central Bank of Nigeria's steam and depreciating exchange rate experienced majorly in February, which in a way eroded the purchasing power of the Nigerian Naira and hindered economic growth. On the part of the federal government of Nigeria, the World Bank also mentioned that some of the structural factors holding back the country's growth potential, and that includes the lack of adequate energy, transport infrastructure, high domestic trade costs, and foreign trade issues. There are widespread insecurity, weak institutions, low levels of human capital development, and that's on the part of the federal government of Nigeria there. So I mentioned already on the part of the CBN, and also now I've mentioned the part of the federal government of Nigeria, in that we have structural issues there. Now, as per projection, since 2015, Nigeria's inflation rate has been on an upward trend, reaching 33.2% in March 2024. Food inflation in March 2024 surged to 40.01% on a year-on-year basis, driven by the rising cost of essential items such as garri, millet, yam, as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics. The cost of housing, of water, of electricity, of gas, and others, including fuel, has jumped by 27.64%, over the past year, which has further burdened the Nigerian household amidst rising inflation and declining incomes. As a result, more Nigerians are finding it difficult to cope daily as the cost of goods and services outweighs their earning power. This is true for many persons in Nigeria today. The cost of getting goods and services, going to the market to get stuff now is way high, and we've also realized that income is not increasing as much as the price of goods and services are increasing. And when that happens, people begin to suffer, and one can already tell how many persons by the end of this year will slip into the poverty line. Painful. If this trend continues, the World Bank has forecasted that it is likely for more Nigerians to fall into abject poverty in the next 2 years. The World Bank has urged the Nigerian government to put out ambitious reforms centered around macroeconomic stabilization to address these issues. There is the economic forecast that there will be an average growth rate of 3.5% between 2024 and 2026. The poverty rate is expected to continue rising in 2024 and 2025 before stabilizing in 2026, given the ongoing reforms and persistent high inflation. Inflation is anticipated to gradually moderate to 15.1% by 2026 due to the tightening monetary policy and effort to stabilize the exchange rate by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Remember that in the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting that was held this year, the monetary policy rate was increased by 400 basis points. And then in the second meeting, which they had in March, they also increased it by 200, meaning that within one month, the monetary policy rate was increased by 600 basis points, meaning that banks are now more careful about how they borrow, how they lend people money. And when that happens, it sucks out money from the economy, and inflation reduces gradually by that, right? So the policies already implemented by the Central Bank of Nigeria is expected to begin to yield basically at towards the end of this year into 2025. We should begin to see the yields from the moves by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the last couple of months. Let's talk about Naira mutilation. The Central Bank of Nigeria has listed 8 activities that constitute the abuse of Nigeria's currency, which is the Naira. This was disclosed on the website of the Central Bank of Nigeria to educate citizens on clean note policy. According to the CBN, the clean notes policy was instituted in a bid to improve the physical appearance and lifespan of the banknotes in circulation. This public enlightenment might have been connected with the arrest and the arraignment of 2 popular individuals recently. In that light, the CBN issued information on the Naira and the law. Now, according to the law, the CBN is responsible for the issuance of the Naira. It is against the law for any individual establishment outside the Central Bank of Nigeria to print money or be in possession of counterfeit notes. Anyone caught in this act will be convicted and may face up to 5 years of imprisonment with no option of fine. According to the CBN, there are 8 ways to abuse the Nigerian Naira. Number 1, it is against, listen now, it is against the law to spray the Naira banknotes at occasions, whether birthday parties, whether wedding receptions, whether burial ceremonies. It's against the law. Number 2, it's against the law to write on banknotes. Number 3, it's against the law to staple the banknotes, as pins can cause corrosion of the banknotes. Number 4, it is against the law to tear the banknotes. Number 5, it's against the law to dance on the banknotes, to stamp on the banknotes. It's against the law to stain the banknotes with oil or ink, as this is also a form of defacing. It's against the law to sell currency banknotes. Mutilation is also something that the law is not in good terms with. Okay, mutilation refers to damage to money that makes it difficult to determine its value or use it for its intended purpose. This applies to direct mutilation. And number 8, it's against the law to reject the naira. So many thou shall not spray, thou shall not reject, so many thou shall not. But the question is, why all these thou shall not? In fact, the title of this episode, I titled this episode, 8 Commandments of the Naira. Are there implications, especially economic implications of Naira abuse? Joining me to discuss this today is so good to have you on the show, Dr. Oluwaseyi Omomi Pupungbe. Did I get your surname correctly?
Pupungbe.
Pupungbe. Okay. So quick one. I'm aware that you know about the present issues around Naira mutilation and the persons arrested already with regards to this. And the Central Bank of Nigeria has reminded us Nigerians of the thou shall not spray, thou shall not staple, thou shall not reject the Nigerian Naira. So I want to ask you, from a general standpoint, what are the consequences of Naira abuse?
Okay, thank you again for having me. Oh, well, there are so many consequences, many consequences, unknown, interestingly, to many Nigerians, but I'll be as cogent as much as possible. First and foremost, one that is known by a majority of Nigerians is the issue of spraying the naira at occasions. This has been condemned over and over again, but Nigerians just, they are adamant. Unfortunately, before now, sanctions are not given to those who abuse the naira by spraying it in parties. So somehow people have taken it as a norm. But thankfully, in recent times, you know, the law enforcement agencies, EFCC in particular now, they've been on their toes in getting people who abuse the naira to face the consequences, which is actually a welcome development. We all heard of the case of Bobrisky, the case of Obi Kubana's waste, and so many people. Yeah, I know that many people are actually guilty of this offense, but while the EFCC may not be able to go for everybody, it's good that they have some scapegoats who will serve as deterrent to others. Now, there are so many consequences unknown to people. Okay, fine. Before I even go to the consequences, there are some other ways in which people also abuse the naira unknown to them. And the issue of stapling the naira to a document is unacceptable because the staple pin has a corrosive agent that in the long run impacts negatively on the currency. So people also need to be aware that when they are sending a document across, it is not appropriate for them to staple any type of currency, any denomination to the document they are sending across because of the negative impact that staple pin can have on the currency being stapled. And then some also pride themselves in giving bouquet, currency bouquet. They design the naira in such a way that it forms a flower bouquet and then they present it. It as much as it looks fashionable, it is not acceptable. So people also need to be aware that it is wrong for them to design a flower bouquet using currencies, different denominations of currencies. And yes, like I mentioned, there is a major, in fact, the one that the law prescribes is that there is the 6 months, and there is a punishment of serving 6 months in jail, and the other is to pay a fine. Which, yes, the case against Bobrisky now was kind of controversial because people felt he could have been given the lesser punishment instead of being given the 6 months in jail. But yeah, it's part of it's at the prerogative of the judge to give what he seems or she deems best. So if Bobrisky had been given 6 months in jail, yes, it's actually the punishment for that offense, which should just be served with all respect. So, yeah, that's a major consequence of abusing the naira, which people need to know because many people are not aware, and some are aware, but because we are not always active or proactive rather in executing policies in this part of the world. So people feel they can do the way they like. But once one person goes for it, another person, is being punished, then other people will sit up and they would know that there is a punishment if they abuse the naira.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw a picture online recently of this was a picture taken from an event where a lady was holding a banner. I guess it was a wedding reception. The lady was holding a banner that had written on it, "Thou shalt not spray money. EFCT they watch you." And it looked, Nigerians
So people are aware.
people
People
are
are aware.
aware. Nigerians can obey this thing.
Exactly.
They can obey, and I've seen many celebrities
Exactly.
online put out pictures of making a cake or bouquet with money, and it's good. They are getting to know now that it's not the best possible thing to do, because we'll talk about the economic implication of abusing the Nigerian naira. So, economically speaking, how does this impact the Nigerian? Because the idea is we have so many people who are poor in Nigeria. In fact, a stat from the World Bank has it that
Right.
more persons are becoming poor in Nigeria by the day. And when things become
Exactly.
more
Yeah.
expensive, when inflation begins to set in and things become more expensive to get, you can already tell that more persons will become poor. So the idea is, what are the economic implications
Exactly.
of abusing the naira? How does this impact the Nigerian economy and, by extension, the Nigerian people?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So first and foremost, I would like to say that it's unfortunate that a few of the people, as in the elites now, who are always the culprits when you talk of those who abuse the naira, a few of them, the actions by these few have a very significant effect on the poor masses that contributes to the larger chunk of the Nigerian population. So it's very important for them to know that their actions with regards to abusing the naira have an indirect impact, or should I even say direct impact, on the poor masses, because in the end there are so many economical implications of their actions unknown to them, which the poor may have to suffer for. On these are the people who are innocent, as it were, being punished for the offense of the few people. So I would explain how this works. We live in an economy that is cash full, in quotes. So many advanced economies in the world now, they are operating a cashless economy. You really do not even have to carry your cash around. With your banks, you can carry out, with banks and other online platforms, you can carry out any type of transaction you desire, but not so in Nigeria, because of the kind of economy and the kind of the demographic, socioeconomic, and other factors that concern us as a people. But then it's very critical for people to know that it is only the money in the bank that the financial institutions really have a hold upon. So when they design policies, when they design financial policies, economic policies, those policies are meant to control the flow of money in the economy. And if care is not taken, if a larger chunk of that money is out there in the hand of the masses, or in the hand of the few people who really throw this money around, these policies may not be able to thrive, or the policies in the end may not see the light of the day. You see, sometimes when we adapt or adopt, as it were, policies from advanced countries, we wonder why they fail. It's basically simple. Our economy is very different from that of advanced economies. The advanced economies can track, you can easily track the money going into a person's account. You can track what that person used the money to do. You can basically track everything that, every transaction or every money that flows from one person to another in advanced economies. That is not the case in Nigeria. That is not the case in most African countries. People literally carry their cash around. You go into the market space. Now, thankfully, many people are beginning to adopt, okay, you can transfer to me. Before now, you'd hear a lot of complaints. No, 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 I'd rather prefer you give me cash. I'd rather you pay in cash, which is not which should not really be acceptable. Before now, the central bank was trying to implement the cashless policy. At some point, the cash, if you, if you remember the drama around the cash crunch last year,
Mhm.
and you can imagine that even the banks were not ready, because at that point, many digital platforms failed. It was very glaring that they were not ready to really accommodate everybody online. They were not really ready to, go into the world of digitalizing the financial world in Nigeria. So it's one major gap. So for me, I would say that the people should not be blamed entirely, because really there is no structure, there is no system in place to ensure that there is a cashless society. But for the people, they should realize that their actions impact on the economy. When they abuse the naira, then government, central banks make policies, financial institutions make policies, and it's difficult for them to execute these policies, because a larger chunk of the money that should be controlled are in the hands of the people. And with that, there's really little that those policies can do. And then it's also important to know that when people abuse the naira, when people engage in money laundering, when people engage in illicit transactions that throw out so much money into the economy, it triggers inflation. Then you see people just, so much money, as it were, chasing fewer goods. And now, in this case, this is triggered from the side of the elites, the few people who really have this money, because the poor really do not have that level of money to throw around. It is the elite, the few rich people who really have. You see people carrying about millions of naira, and then you wonder, what do you want to use millions to do? Really, doesn't make sense. But, people just, because we they believe we are in a lawless, which is gradually becoming a, they feel really like. And all of these actions can also trigger inflation. Another thing that people also should know is that there is a form of revenue loss to the government when people abuse the naira. And I know you may start to wonder how does this happen? You know, it's only possible for the government to tax revenues when they can track the transactions or the flow of transactions regarding that money. So imagine if people engage in money laundering, imagine if people, just get into parties, throw money around, and people go home with large chunks of money, then in the end, those money are used for other illicit businesses, which the government may not be able to track. And then they may not be able to tax all of those. Of course, such transactions are illicit, and the government may not be able to tax such types of businesses or transactions, which will lead to revenue loss for the government. And then when the economy is not stable, and investors who even want to invest, investors who want to really build their businesses in Nigeria, see that economic policies are failing, and it seems the financial institutions and other stakeholders are not up to the task. It makes them look incompetent, and then these investors lack confidence. They feel, is this really an economy we want to invest in? Is this really a country where we really want to build or grow our businesses? So those are some of the impacts that naira abuse can have on the economy. So if only people know that it's not good to throw money around, why not invest this money in the end? And another thing people also need to know is that there are two major ways of using your money. It's either you spend on consumables, like the items you really need in the short term, or you invest. So you can imagine, and in reality, the money you need for your daily consumption, for your daily survival, is not as significant as the money you would really need for investment. Imagine the large chunks of money flying around in parties and other occasions, and imagine using those money for better, um, investing those money into better courses in Nigeria. Nigeria will be better for it. But imagine, after spending all of the money, people take this money, they go drink, they party, they spend the money recklessly, because in the end, the money was not even, oftentimes, such monies are not legally acquired. So you see people
That's
just
true.
using the money. illicitly, they
Hmm.
spend it unwisely, and all of these have that trickling down effect on the
Definitely.
economy.
Definitely, they
So I
do.
hope,
Yeah,
yes. So,
definitely. I think you mentioned something I want to just touch on a little, which is of the fact that the government may want to consider amplifying efforts towards ensuring that digital transactions are encouraged. So,
right.
yes, if the government can amplify that the more to say see the reasons we wanted to do this, because sometimes when people don't know the impact of something, they won't take it pretty seriously. Now something else again is on the fact
Right.
that when we abuse the naira and it becomes tattered and not usable anymore, it gives the central bank more work to do. They will have to get more
To
money
do
from the
by minting
government.
more currencies,
Yes,
right?
to print more currencies, and then
Mm-hmm.
it affects the people. So, can you try to
Yeah.
connect both of them together? Let's see. Yes, in a way to wrap up.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah,
Like connect the issue of
the issue of ensuring that more persons are aware of the reason for engaging in digital transactions, and also the fact
Okay,
that
okay, okay.
when people waste money, when people abuse the naira, like stapling of the naira and all of that, or writing on it even, it gives the
Mm,
central bank more work to do. They
mm,
then will now
yeah,
borrow money to now print more money.
yeah.
Things can just try to connect the dots, please.
Mm. Okay, okay. So first, yes, from the part, okay, so I would take this from two angles. First, the part of the government and other financial stakeholders, and the other bit from the consumers, as in the Nigerian population.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so the government, they have a long way to go. Honestly, that's the truth regarding digitalizing the economy, because we still live in a very cash full economy as it were. So the digital space needs to be maximized in such a way that, you know, there are so many financially excluded people, especially when you go to the slums, when you go to the rural areas. Many people do not have bank accounts. In fact, by the time they speak on what they have in mind, you laugh, because many of them feel the banks are for the rich people. They don't have the money to be putting in banks. And then these are people who engage in informal sector. They bring in their money, they keep it inside their house. Some believe in the cooperative societies, where some even have a form of adjust system in place. They don't want to go into the bank. Unfortunately, this is only, or as it were, a major platform for which the central bank can really track, the volume of financial transactions in the economy. And then for the people too, it is very important for them to know that when they abuse the currency, it's also an additional burden to the government, because in the end, when you deface the currency, when the currency becomes tattered before the shelf life is over, then the government, all of these monies, and the interesting thing about Nigerians is that you see people, handling the currency the way they handle the naira, and then by the time you try to give them a rough currency, they will turn it down. They'll tell you, no, 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 I don't want this. It's tattered. It has torn. It's
Very
this,
true.
it's that. And you see them, the way they are also handling, the way they're also handling it is nothing to write home about. So, we are very good at castigating, but we don't look inwards to see, okay, what am I doing wrong? So, yeah, so that also has to change. As individuals, we really need to understand that it's good to handle the currency properly. If possible, people should have hand wallets, purses, where they can arrange their currencies. And you see people just squeeze their money into their pocket, they squeeze it into any available space. And by the time it goes from two, three hands, by the time it gets to the fourth or fifth hand, the money is nothing to write home about again. So people need to understand that they should learn to handle their money very well, at least pending the time we really fully digitalize the financial economy. People should learn to, handle the currency very well. And this will also help to minimize waste and cost from the part of the central bank, because by the time they don't really have to produce so many currency in them, they'll be able to have that money to do something else that will also enhance the economy.
Definitely.
People need to be aware that it's important to currency versus allow the government to incur additional costs. So Hello.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Oluwase. Thank you for your time.
You're
We
welcome.
enjoyed this conversation.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, brother. On that note, we have come to the end of the show today. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms. My name is Oluwak Pelumi Awe. See you on the next one.